I'm pretty sure that I'm not the best on rowing technique in the world. I'm not best in physiology in the world. Obviously, I'm good enough to make people row fast, but I think that what I have been getting good feedback on in Norway is how we have created the environment for performance. How we work with the environment in Norway and some keywords for that, and also gliding a little bit to psychology. They did a big study in Scandinavia, and they asked why does customer leave the companies. And when they asked the salesperson on the company, they said that our customers are leaving because the price are so high, we have wrong products, our own performance is not the problem, and there are some other issues as well. And then they asked the customers why did they leave. Only a few persons who actually said that the price was the reason that they left. It was all about people. Because I know that you have the same with recruitation in Norway, and I think that is the same here. We have to ask people to stay in rowing for a long time to be really good, and we don't have so much to offer them. We don't have any money to offer. We have to focus to create an environment that people want to stay in. We had a delegation from China in Olympiatoppen in Norway for a visit, and they couldn't understand why people trained, because they didn't get any money. Maybe they have 3,000 full-time employed rowers, but the results are bad. We know from Scandinavian sport that to be good in rowing or in playing music or being an actor, it requires 10,000 hours of practice. And my job as a coach is to create an environment that people want to attend for 10,000 hours and actually focus to be really good in rowing. It's not always natural if you're 20 years old that you will go to me Saturday morning at 8 o'clock to get beaten up. It's not every 20-year-old guy or girl who love to come to me every Saturday morning to be beaten up. So it's to me it's to create the environment and to highlight the higher purpose. So a question that we often ask ourselves is, who do you want to be? So it's an active choice for me, and I want people to be in my environment, to do really well. And there are some theories who is important to me, who has created my leadership. And you might have heard of them. Have you heard of this? The McGregor's X and Y theory. It says it's a theory about how you look on humans. The X theory says you have to control everything people do, and you have to have schemes and regimes to motivate people, because you don't think that they want to achieve on their own. And the Y theory, of course, says that people have their own drive, people want to achieve, so that's why I can have Wednesday and Sunday people can train on their own, because I trust that the people doing the work that they want, they need to do. It's obvious when people have when the leadership is a Y theoretical leadership, you will give the people ownership. They will take interest in their own process, and usually they do more. They understand why they do it. Their own drive is the key factor, and that seems to make people go further. The Chinese system is very much an X theory system. I pay you, and you do the work. And of course, there is times. I think I as a person is not just Y or just X. If I have a group of 3-year-olds and I'm gonna take them across the street, I think that Y theory is useless. Because it means try and you'll see if you make it. If you're gonna take a lot of 3-year-olds through the street, I think you really have to give orders. You have to be an X person. So of course I move from X to Y a little bit in my leadership, but I am a Y person. I trust the people that I work with. Do you know that Sweden was the best nation in tennis in the world for a while? At one point, Sweden has 6 players in the top 15 in the world. And there was one person who was, because almost all of them came from the same region and finally from the same club. And of course people did studies. The guy's name, the coach name, is Kalle Hageskog, and he's now working. Actually, we have recruited him to Norway, another Swede in Norway, to work with the Norwegian Olympic Committee. There were one researcher in Sweden. He got a professor from just study what happened during this period. There were 3 conclusions. The people was seen. Wilander, Stefan Edberg, they were seen, they were heard, and they were confirmed. That was the 3 key words from that study. I mean, in rowing, I can see that your catches have been much better now recently. I can see that your leg drive is better, because that means I see you. He's not known for being the best technical tennis coach in the world. He's not known for being the best person in physiology in the world. But now he is a professor in coaching and leadership. I mean, tennis is a tough sport, and to be best in the world in tennis, where there is so much money, is really. Even though that the 80s was easier in the 80s, it is again a good point out, a good confirmation that to create an environment that people want to be in is really important. And when we talked to Stefan Edberg and Mats Wilander about this period, Kalle Hageskog was driving a Volkswagen bus, and they were going to competitions in Denmark and in northern of Germany, and they remember that that's the most happy sports period in their life. Poor resources, but really good, and also it was not in training. There were tough games. But they could congratulate each other on good play, because their aim focus was not to win in the group. The aim focus was to conquer the world. The most important thing is not to beat Olaf Tufte on the single training. Of course, in the training that is really important. But afterwards he can say to Olaf, "Good row, you beat me today." But for him, it's to beat Anders Synek. That is a goal in the end. Have you heard about the Hawthorne studies? The studies are from the factories in the United States during the Industrial Revolution. When people started to work in the factory, they got higher salaries, and people were kind of happy. But they found out that motivation was going down. People didn't perform at work. So they got ventilation in the factories, and the motivation went up. But it stopped. The motivation stopped again, so they get better light, and the motivation went up. But same process again, so they got breaks during the day, and motivation went up, and they got free lunch, but it stopped. It stopped. The motivation stopped going up, so they took away everything, and the motivation went up again. What that means is that you need to have continuous motion. If we always do the same training program, if we always have the same words, if we never do any changes, the motivation will probably decrease. So that's why it's probably a good idea that I quit my job after Tokyo, because they need a new voice. Maybe a new voice saying about the same things. That also affect me in my mind. How can we do things a little bit different to keep the motivation up? Can we have a new training model? Can we organize ourselves in a different way? Can we train on the other way on the course for once? So it's small changes. Have you heard of Hertzberg two-factor theory? For sure. It's not like I read the theories and I said, this is whom I'm going to be. I probably have found the theories, and they kind of mix good with my personality. But it's good to hang up your leadership on some things, I believe. But the two-factor theory also says that if you have boat who's not good enough to be world champion in, it might be demotivating. But if it's good enough to be world champion, and it's getting even better, it doesn't motivate us even more. It doesn't give us higher motivation. So if the center is good enough, we don't have to build a better center. So, but what gives us extra motivation is seen, heard, confirmed. That gets us from 0 to plus 100. But what do we often do when people are demotivated? You have given them better equipment. And if it's not good at work, people might raise your salary, but it doesn't give you long-term motivation. Long-term motivation is really in relations, seen and heard, good leadership, that you can feel that you develop during the work. That's where motivation lives. You shouldn't forget the other factors as well, because if we have boats who are 20 years old and made of woods, and we have old wooden oars, that it doesn't matter how happy we are because we won't get world champions at all. But there are two different things. The things that takes you from 0 to minus 100, it's often material, how you travel, salaries and whatever. And the things that get you from 0 to plus 100 is connected to relations. If I have a bad relation to my, if I had a girlfriend, if I have a bad relation to my girlfriend, a new car probably won't help. The Michigan study is talking about the best leaders in the world, and they tried to find from the University of Michigan. They're trying to find what is common for the best leaders in the world, and they were not more intelligent than the second best leaders in the world. They were not more better educated, and they didn't have a better background, but they were never lazy. The smallest key factor to the best leaders in the world was that they were never lazy. And I think that we all know that if you want to perform as a rowing coach, you're probably willing to do a lot, and you don't look too much on the clock. I mean, you were coaching yesterday on a Saturday evening after this session. I mean, that is to me that is a really good sign of wanting something more, something extra. And I'm sure that many of us here has been athletes as well, and I know that as an athlete you can see when the coach wants to be here or somewhere else, and of course even I sometimes want to be somewhere else. So we have to take care of ourselves sometimes as well, treat ourselves. So I think it's as a coach, it's really important to understand who is a gardener and who is the flower. So to me, it's I think that when Jose Mourinho calls himself the divine, I think that is so, to me, it's really tacky. I totally believe that you are extremely important persons in a rower's life, and I think that you can create fantastic environments, and you can be a part of people making fantastic results. But we have to understand that it's about the rowers. So what do I do? I spend a lot of time to communicate, of course. I have spent a lot of time to create winners, and everybody can be a winner if you just help them to find the right goal. Everybody can't be world champions, but everybody can be winners. I think that is very important. For me, that is a very important distinction. If I have rowers who will if you can reach this goal this year, you're a winner. But if everybody needs to be world champions every year, then we will create a lot of losers. I believe a lot in ownership, that the athletes are going to be a big part of their own process and even own the process. Of course, motivate, create relation, and confront if needed. But I think that to me, it's very important. No confrontation without relation. That is a really important word to me. Because if we have a good relation, then I can tell you things that are tough to hear. Because if I know you and you know that I want your best, then confrontation is on place. Otherwise, to me, it's forbidden. Because at least for me, it's like that, and I'm sure that it's the way for many of you as well. That you have felt that somewhere, maybe way back, but you remember it when you got confronted really unfair from somebody who didn't like you, and that is a responsibility we have as leaders to build up people. To me, it's also a lot about see the big picture, see the whole environment around the athlete. I mean, sometimes they have love problems, sometimes they are sick, sometimes they have financial problems, sometimes they have some problems at school, and to me it's important to see the big picture. So when you do that, you will get a lot of good cred back. I had an athlete who did a really stupid thing just a few weeks ago, and he said that, okay, I did this. The worst thing is that Johan, I made you really disappointed right now. And of course, we do a lot of the normal coaching stuff: study, plan, inform, initiate, instruct, support, control, and evaluate. That is a normal coaching chain. I do a lot of try to see things in the long term. I mean, as I said yesterday many times, and I probably will say it today as well, it's to be really good in rowing is a long-term process. Some people who can have had a big reflection on me, and it's Leon Festinger, who is a psychologist. Will Riley was one of the first sports psychologists in Norway, and Dalai Lama, you know him. But Dalai Lama says that it's not everybody in the world who feels humanity. But if you start to behave human, that might even be one of your greatest values. Mm-hmm. So you can start, that means that you can start with behaving. You don't have to have the feeling of being a world champion, but if you start to behave as a world champion and do the things that world champions do, the possibility to be a world champion is much bigger. If you don't feel love to the people, you don't have to start with your thoughts, but if you start to behave like you love the people, you will get a lot of cred back, and that will be one of your values. So it can start with behaving, and that is an important factor for us. And people seems to like to do the right thing. People seems to like to hear that was a good thing you did there. People seem to love that, and we know that kids love that. If you said that to a kid, he will do it repeatedly. And I think it's the same with us grown-up human beings. So if people are doing good things, give them cred. I'm getting criticized at occasions for being too positive, but I never lie. When I think that something is good, I'll tell it, and I tell it probably for Olaf Tufte. He hates it. Please just tell me what's wrong, because that is in his upbringing. His father always tell him what was wrong. He's very open about that, and he needs negative feedback. But if he wants that, he needs to have another coach. before Olympics, I don't know which Olympics, but they did a study in USA on the people who was going for the 8, and we know that the American 8 usually is a good one. And they did a study where the coach he wasn't saying anything, but if he was inside the room, they performed 8% better than if he was outside. So that was 1 meter indifferent, and this was not kids, it was people who were aiming for Olympic gold. And to me, for instance, it is important. I think I see so many coaches who comes to the World Championships or the Olympic Games, and they have the vision of them is that I hope this is over soon. And it's natural, because it's the end of the season, we have done a lot of work, but to me as a coach it's really important to coach myself to be at my best when the rowers going to perform their best. We work hard with the environment, and I'm going to show you the last few slides just a little bit about how we do that. Just like corporates nowadays, we just don't value education and performance, we also value social skills, because we're going to stay together so much. We have actually not thrown out a guy who was extremely good, but he was good enough to be able to perform, but his social skills was so bad, so he destroyed for the group, and he couldn't be with us. And we try to create an environment where we can learn from each other. We were on a training camp now, where we had the rowers and the canoe people from Norway at the same camp, and we had some professionals from the Olympic Committee, and they said they gave credit to the rowers because they learned from each other a lot, but the canoers they kept to themselves. And for the time being in Norway, rowing does make medals, canoers almost doesn't qualify. So it's a big difference between the group, and I think this is one of the factors, because canoers are not less talented. They doesn't train less than the rowers, but the culture is not good enough.